Steve here, and I wanted to just do a little update on my previous video about David Goggins, and I just wanted to make it clear that in case there's any misconceptions as to whether I agree with everything he says or everything he has gone through and stuff, that's not the point at all. I mean, those of you who watched numerous of my videos, I don't agree with war and fighting, foreign wars and all kinds of stuff where there's no conceivable connection as to what that's got to do with so-called defense of a nation, let's say. So he explains the strength he gained in terms of losing his fear of death, partly as a result of basically kicking down doors where there might be people in behind there. And I think he made the comment that in order to defend people to have freedom, people like him have to do stuff like that. I agree that people have to, that historically there's been, men have defended their nations, absolutely, through their bravery and what have you. But kicking down a door in Iraq or Afghanistan or something like that I'm not making the case at all that has anything to do with American national security. It's American imperialism, probably other things going on there as well. But I just wanted to make that clear, right? And also, I wanted to make it clear that, I think he spells it out fairly well, that he didn't have an optimal upbringing at all. I mean, this is, I'm not going to make the case that it was deliberate child abuse, but that was the side effect of it, to have a father missing a lot of the time and the mother to be working all over the place and him basically having to fend for himself at a very early age. That has the potential to go the other way, statistically, right? He was able to, what didn't kill him made him stronger, and but many times it kills people. It kills their spirit anyways. So yeah, he's found a way. I think the biggest takeaway that I can get from him is not that I necessarily agree. Obviously, how can I agree with a child growing up like that? I mean, you can't agree with it. I can't possibly agree with people fighting wars in other countries that those countries have not invaded you, and that sort of thing. But nevertheless, the lessons that he has to put forth there, in terms of dealing and overcoming pain, and actually using pain as a driver for what he wants to do. In one of the last coffee chats that we did, I talked about how, we human beings, we are motivated, and he uses the term drive. We're motivated by pleasure, and we're pushed in a way by pain. So it's like a four-wheel drive, right? A four-wheel drive has traction in the front and traction in the back. Well, that's kind of like what this is. We have this pulling power, and he calls it his cookie jar of things he wants, and then he has his jar of fuck in behind pushing him, right? And I would call that all the shit or the pain and all that sort of stuff. And he's able to see that. So he's able to see the power of pain in terms of a driver for what he wants to do, which results in his fulfillment, or what he would call happiness. So there's a lot of value in there, in spite of whether we or I agree with everything he's done, right? It's like, I was talking to somebody a little while ago about how we can get distracted sometimes by hearing something we don't quite like, that's upsetting to us or whatever. But if we can learn from many different sources, we're better off for it. Even our enemies. It was probably Lao Tzu who once said, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And maybe what he meant by that was just to learn from them. I mean, if they're your enemies and they're having a great effect on your life, then they have strengths that we can learn from, right? And this guy, I wouldn't consider anybody's enemy at this point, unless you're maybe an Iraqi and he had, and so on, but or wherever he was fighting. It's just about learning. The guy is has gone through a horrendous adversity, I would say, and he's learned to cultivate strengths from that. Almost on the lines of, maybe even more so, but along the lines of Wim Hof. Wim Hof is this guy who's been able to transcend the ability of the body to overcome the will. And, David Goggins, I would say, has done that as well. He's been able to have his will be stronger than the wishings and the titillations and requests from the body. I've learned that to a certain extent, though I wouldn't put myself in the same camp as these guys. I mean, a couple of years ago I walked 8,000 kilometers for an unofficial world record for a solo hike of that particular trek. And, it was about being able to bypass pain. I remember one time my feet were so blistered, and for some reason I had heard somewhere that it's sometimes a good idea to cut the blisters off. I don't know what I was thinking, but I cut these things off. So for the next few days, it was excruciating pain to not only put my shoes on, but to get walking. But what I would do is I would move my consciousness away from the pain. And after a while, I didn't feel the pain. And a few years back, I had tried this too, because I'd been practicing with, this is one of the reasons I can relate to this guy so well, even though I haven't gone through the same extent whatsoever. But a number of years before, I had, much to my dentist's arguing against the idea, I convinced my dentist to do dental surgery on me without anesthetic, with a drill and everything. And it was possible. At times when my consciousness came back into that, boom, it was like a shock, right? But as long as I could keep meditatively away and leave my body essentially alone, there was a way of transcending that. It was like realizing, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it. It wasn't just to enjoy the pain. It was to see what. In fact, it was to transcend the pain. And this is one of the things I think he's getting to. Is extremely powerful, because those of us who try to escape pain, we become very soft. And that's what the whole Western world socialism is really, modern socialism is all about, is trying our hardest to coddle everybody, every creature, every dog, everything, and we're turning into a bunch of bowls of pudding, basically. And the advantage for those who aren't in that mindset is, well, we have a lot to give, because there's going to be a reckoning where people are going to have to learn what the value of pain, and it's to grow us stronger. It's to wake us up to the challenge that it is. And I think David Goggins has a wonderful message along that line. I just wanted to make it clear that I didn't agree with everything he did, like going to war, and I don't agree with the circumstances under which he had no control over, by obviously as a child, but he was handed those pains, and he was able to find the strength in them, find the value in them eventually, and grow because of it. So I just want to make that case. If you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, and share. Comment in the box below, and thank you everybody for chiming in. Talk again soon. Bye for now.